My name is Samuel Green, and I am 81 years old. There was a time when my house was full of voices, laughter, arguments, footsteps running up and down the stairs. Now, most days, it is just me, the ticking clock on the wall, and the sound of my own breathing. I never thought that reading a few pages of paper, a simple will, could take everything else away from me. But it did. It took my family. And it left me with a silence I still don't know how to live with. I used to believe that if you worked hard, loved your children, and did your best to be fair, things would somehow turn out right in the end. That belief carried me through long years of early mornings, sore hands, and tired nights. I built my life around it. I built my family around it. And now, when I look back, I wonder if I was naive or if I simply wanted to believe that love was stronger than money. My wife, Margaret, Maggie, as I always called her, passed away 3 years ago. 49 years we were married. 49 years of shared mornings, shared worries, shared dreams. She was the steady one, the heart of our home. When she was gone, the house felt hollow, like someone had taken the walls and left only air behind. I tried to stay busy, to keep moving, because if I sat still too long, the quiet became unbearable. I talked to her photograph more than I care to admit. "You should be here for this," I'd say. "You know what to do." But she wasn't, and I had to make choices alone. We had 3 children. Daniel, the eldest, always serious, always eager to prove himself. Ruth, our middle child, sensitive and strong in ways people didn't always see. And Emily, the youngest, bright, talkative, the one who could make Maggie laugh even on her worst days. They were all grown now, with families of their own, busy lives, busy worries. But they still came around. Sunday dinners, holidays, birthdays. The house wasn't as loud as it used to be, but it still felt like a family. After Maggie died, they started asking questions, gentle at first. "Dad, have you thought about making a will? We just want to make sure everything's in order. It's better to plan ahead." I understood. I wasn't offended. At my age, you think about such things whether you want to or not. Still, part of me didn't like it. It felt like talking about the end before I was ready to admit it was coming. But I did think about it, long and hard. Late at night, sitting at the kitchen table where Maggie used to drink her tea, I would stare at the walls and remember everything this house had seen. The kids growing up, the fights, the forgiveness, the way Maggie and I scraped together enough to pay the mortgage month after month, year after year, until one day it was finally ours. That house wasn't just property. It was our life's work. And yet, I also knew that life hadn't been the same for all 3 of them. Daniel had done well. Good job, big house, comfortable life. He had always landed on his feet. Ruth, though Ruth had struggled, a difficult marriage that ended badly, years of raising her kids alone, jobs that never seemed to last. She never complained much, but I saw the worry in her eyes. Emily was somewhere in between, not rich, not poor, just busy, always chasing the next thing. I loved them all, truly. But love doesn't mean pretending not to see. And when I finally sat down with a lawyer to write my will, I made a decision that I believed, with all my heart, was the right one. I decided not to divide everything equally. I left the house to Ruth. The rest, savings, investments, a few valuables, would be split among the 3 of them. But the house, the heart of our family, would go to Ruth, not because I loved her more, but because I knew she needed it more, because I wanted her to have stability, a place that could be hers no matter what happened next in her life, a place where she wouldn't have to worry about rent rising or landlords selling or being forced to move again. I could hear Maggie's voice in my head when I made that choice. "Look after her, Sam," she would have said. "She's had it hard." And so I did. I told myself they would understand. I told myself that when the time came, they would see it the way I did, as a final act of care, not favoritism. I was wrong. For a long time after I signed that will, life went on as usual, or as usual as it can when you are in your late 70s and learning how to live without the woman who shared nearly every moment of your adult life. The children still came for dinners. Ruth still brought her kids on weekends when she could. Daniel talked about his work, his plans, always in a hurry. Emily filled the house with stories and laughter, just like she always had. No one knew what was written on those pages tucked away in a folder in my desk drawer. And sometimes, watching them all sit around my table, I wondered if I should tell them. But every time I thought about it, my chest tightened. I told myself it was better this way, better to keep the peace while I could. As the years crept on, my body slowed down more than my mind was ready to accept. My knees ached. My hands trembled when I tried to button my shirt. Some mornings, it took me longer to gather the strength just to get out of bed. Still, I managed. I wanted to manage. I wanted to stay in that house, surrounded by Maggie's things, by our memories, by the life we had built together. The children worried, of course. They called more often. They offered to help with groceries, with repairs. Sometimes I let them. Sometimes I waved them off and said, I'm still here. I'm still capable. And most days I believed it. Then came the winter when I caught pneumonia. It started as a cough, nothing more. But within a week, I was in the hospital, struggling to breathe, tubes in my nose, machines beeping beside me. I remember Daniel standing at the foot of my bed, arms crossed, trying to look strong. Emily crying quietly in the corner. Ruth holding my hand, whispering, You're not going anywhere, Dad. You hear me? You're not. For a while, it wasn't clear if she was right. There were nights when I drifted in and out of sleep, hearing voices that sounded far away, wondering if Maggie was waiting for me somewhere beyond it all. I pulled through, slowly, but when I came home I wasn't the same. I tired easily. I forgot things. The stairs felt steeper than they ever had before. The children insisted I needed more help. Just until you're stronger, they said. I knew that phrase. I had heard it before. And though a part of me resisted, another part of me was tired of fighting. So I agreed to have Ruth stay with me for a while. She moved into the guest room, cooked meals, kept track of my medications, made sure I didn't overdo it. In many ways, it felt right. Like family taking care of family, the way it's supposed to be. It was during that time that I had another scare. A dizzy spell in the kitchen, a fall that left me bruised and shaken, though nothing was broken. After that, the conversations changed. Dad, what if something worse happens? What if no one's here when you fall? We just want you safe. Those words again. Safe. I could see where this was heading. And for the first time, I started to wonder if maybe my time in that house was truly coming to an end. But fate decided before I did. One quiet night, I went to bed feeling more tired than usual. My chest felt heavy, my breathing shallow. I told myself it would pass, but it didn't. In the early hours of the morning, I woke up gasping, clutching at the sheets, my heart racing like it was trying to escape my body. Ruth found me like that and called an ambulance. The ride to the hospital was a blur of flashing lights and urgent voices. I remember thinking, in some distant corner of my mind, so this is it. This is how it ends. It didn't end, not then. But when I woke up later, surrounded by the familiar hospital smell and the soft hiss of oxygen, I knew something had changed. The doctors said my heart was weak, that I'd had a serious episode, that I was lucky to be alive. They spoke in careful tones, using words like manage and monitor and consider your options. I knew what they meant. They meant that I was no longer the man who could live alone without worry. They meant that my independence was slipping away. After that, the children talked in hushed voices in the hallway. I could hear my name, could hear the tension. When they finally came into my room together, I knew a decision had been made. Dad, Daniel said gently, we think it's time we talk about arrangements for the future. Emily nodded. Somewhere you can get proper care, all the time. Ruth squeezed my hand, her eyes full of concern. We just want what's best for you. There it was again, what's best. I closed my eyes and took a long breath. I was tired, tired of hospitals, tired of pretending I wasn't afraid, tired of fighting a body that no longer obeyed me, so I nodded. All right, I said. We'll talk about it. In the end, I didn't even make it back to my house. After a short stay in rehabilitation, they moved me into a small assisted living facility not far from town. They said it would be temporary, at least at first, until we saw how things went. I packed only what I needed: clothes, toiletries, Maggie's photograph. I told myself I'd be back soon. I wanted to believe that. But deep down, I think I already knew. A few weeks after I settled in, they held a family meeting in a small room at the facility. A social worker sat with us, explaining plans, costs, options. It was all very calm, very reasonable. And then Daniel cleared his throat and said, "There's also something else we should take care of. Dad's affairs, just in case." That was when they told me. They had contacted the lawyer. They had reviewed my will. They wanted to make sure everything was clear, organized, ready. And so, one quiet afternoon, sitting in that little room with pale walls and uncomfortable chairs, my children read my will. They didn't have to, not yet. I was still alive, still breathing, still there. But they did. Maybe they wanted to be prepared. Maybe they wanted reassurance. Maybe they were just curious. I don't know. I only know that once those words were spoken out loud, nothing between us would ever be the same. Daniel read, his voice steady at first, the usual lines, names, small bequests, and then he reached the part about the house. "I leave my home on Willow, drive to my daughter Ruth," he read. The room went silent. Emily's eyes widened. Daniel stopped reading. Ruth froze, her hand tightening around mine. "What?" Emily said softly. "What did he just say?" Daniel looked up at me, his face changing. "Dad, what is this?" I swallowed. My mouth felt dry. "It means exactly what it says," I replied quietly. "The house goes to Ruth." "But why?" Emily asked. "Why just her?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "So that's it then. You've already decided, without telling us." Ruth shook her head quickly. "I didn't know about this, I swear. Dad never told me." And she was telling the truth. I hadn't told any of them. I took a deep breath. "I made that choice because I thought it was right," I said. Ruth S. had a hard road. I wanted her to have some security, a place that would always be hers. "So we get nothing," Daniel snapped. "That's not true," I said. "Everything else is divided among all of you. This isn't about loving one of you more. It's about need." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "It feels like you're choosing her over us." "That's not what I'm doing," I said. "At least, that's not what I meant." But sometimes, what we mean doesn't matter as much as what people hear. The air in that small room felt thick after the words were spoken. No one moved for a moment. I could hear the faint hum of the lights above us, the distant sound of voices in the hallway outside, but inside it was as if time had stopped. Daniel stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Emily looked between us, her face pale, tears sliding down her cheeks. Ruth kept shaking her head, whispering, "I didn't ask for this, I didn't know." But it didn't matter. The words were already out there. The decision had already been made. "So you've been planning this all along," Daniel said finally, his voice tight. "Sitting in your house, deciding who deserves what, while the rest of us just wait." "That's not fair," I replied. "This wasn't about deserving. It was about making sure all of you would be okay." "Okay," he laughed bitterly. "I've worked my whole life too, Dad. You think I don't need help? Or Emily, you think because we're not struggling right now, we never will?" Emily wiped her eyes. "It's not even about the money," she said. "It's about what it says, that you think Ruth matters more." Ruth squeezed my hand harder. "Stop it," she pleaded. "He's trying to help. He always does that. He always puts everyone else first." "That's easy to say when you're the one getting the house," Daniel snapped back. Her face flushed. "I didn't want this. I never asked for it. I just wanted my dad." I tried to calm them. Please, this isn't how I wanted this to happen. Your reading a will meant for when I'm gone. I'm still here. I'm still your father. Daniel stood up abruptly, pushing his chair back. That's just it. You're still here, and yet you've already decided what happens when you're not, without even talking to us. Do you have any idea how that feels? I looked up at him, my heart pounding. I thought I was protecting you from this conversation, I said. I thought it would only matter later. Well, it matters now, Emily said through tears. And it hurts. No one spoke after that. The social worker cleared her throat, uncomfortable, and suggested we take a break. But the damage was done. You can't unhear words like that. You can't put them back on the page once they've been read. They left the room one by one. Daniel didn't look at me. Emily paused at the door, hesitated, then turned away. Ruth stayed for a moment longer, her eyes full of guilt and sorrow. I'm so sorry, Dad, she whispered. I never wanted this to come between us. I reached for her hand. I know, I said. None of this is your fault. But even as I said it, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. After that day, things were never the same. Daniel stopped calling. At first I told myself he was just busy. He always was. But days turned into weeks and weeks into months, and my phone stayed silent. When I finally tried to call him myself, it went to voicemail. I left a message, then another. He never returned them. Emily still called, but her voice was different. Careful, distant. Our conversations became short, polite exchanges about my health, the weather, nothing more. She never mentioned the will. Neither did I. It hung between us like an invisible wall. Only Ruth kept coming just as she had before. She brought me soup, sat with me during meals, listened when I needed to talk. But even with her, something had changed. I could see it in her eyes, the guilt, the worry that she was somehow stealing something that didn't truly belong to her. More than once she said, Dad, you can change it, you still can. And every time I shook my head. No, I told her. I made this choice. I won't undo it just because it's hard. But at night, when I was alone in my room, staring at Maggie's photograph on the bedside table, I wasn't so sure. You know what to do, I whispered to her. You always did. I imagined her sitting beside me, her hand on mine, her calm voice telling me everything would be all right. But the room stayed quiet, and the silence felt heavier than ever. I began to notice the way other residents at the facility talked about their families, some with pride, some with sadness, some not at all. There was a man down the hall who hadn't had a visitor in years, a woman who waited by the door every afternoon, convinced her daughter was coming, even though the staff knew she was. I used to think that kind of loneliness could never be mine. I had 3 children, a big family, a lifetime of love, and yet here I was, feeling that same hollow ache growing inside my chest. One afternoon, a few months after the will was read, I received a letter from Daniel. Not a call, not a visit, a letter. His handwriting was sharp, almost angry on the page. He wrote that he felt betrayed, that he couldn't understand how I could make such a decision without talking to him, that he felt like he had lost not just his inheritance but his place in my heart. He said he needed time, space, and that, for now, it was better if we didn't speak. I read that letter over and over until the words blurred. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer beside my bed. I haven't heard from him since. Emily came to see me once after that. She sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. I don't want to lose you, Dad, she said, but I don't know how to get past this. I reached out and took her hand. Neither do I admitted. She squeezed my fingers, then stood up and left before either of us could say more. So now, most days, it is just me and Ruth. And sometimes, not even that. Time has a strange way of passing when your world grows smaller. Days blur together, weeks slip by without notice. The seasons change outside the windows of this place, but inside, everything feels the same. The same hallways, the same routines, the same quiet evenings. And slowly, almost without realizing it, I began to understand that this might be the shape of the rest of my life. Ruth still visits, though not as often as before. I know it's not because she doesn't care. She has her own life, her own worries, her own children who still need her. But sometimes I wonder if part of her stays away because being here reminds her of the house, of what waits for her someday, of what it cost to receive it. When she does come, she brings little things, homemade soup, fresh fruit, pictures of the kids. We talk about ordinary things, school, work, the weather. We avoid the future. We avoid the will. We avoid the tension that sits between us like an unspoken guest. Once she said very softly, "Dad, I wish you'd talk to us first." I nodded. "So do I replied. And that was all we said. Some regrets are too heavy for words. I think often about fairness, about what it really means. All my life, I tried to be fair. When the kids were young, I cut their sandwiches into equal halves. I counted their Christmas presents. I made sure no one got more than the others, even when one of them wanted something more than the rest. Fairness was my way of showing love. But as they grew older, I learned that fairness isn't always about equality. Sometimes it's about seeing who needs more and giving where it matters most. That's what I thought I was doing with the house. I still think that some days. Other days, I'm not so sure. Late at night, when sleep won't come, I replay that afternoon in the meeting room. Daniel's face, Emily's tears, Ruth's shock. I hear my own voice, trying to explain, trying to hold everything together, and I wonder if I had said it differently, if I had chosen different words, if I had brought them all together and told them while Maggie was still alive, would it have changed anything? Or was this hurt always waiting, just beneath the surface, no matter how gently I tried to handle it? There are moments when doubt creeps in so strongly that it takes my breath away. What if I was wrong? What if, in trying to help one child, I ended up losing them all? What if the house, that symbol of everything Maggie and I built, becomes the very thing that tears our family apart long after I'm gone? The thought keeps me awake some nights, staring at the ceiling, my heart heavy with questions that have no answers. I talk to Maggie about it, I always have. Did we do this right? I whisper into the dark. Did I? I imagine her listening, her calm eyes thoughtful, her hand resting on mine. She was always better at seeing the bigger picture. She used to tell me, "You can't make everyone happy, Sam. You just have to do what you believe is right and hope they see your heart." I hold on to that, even when my heart aches, especially when it aches. The staff here are kind. They really are. One nurse, a young woman named Lily, often sits with me for a few minutes when she has time. She asks about my life, about Maggie, about the kids when they were little. One evening she said, "You must be proud of them." I smiled faintly. "I am," I told her, "even when they're angry with me." She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Or maybe she just saw another old man with a story too heavy to carry alone. Some afternoons, I go down to the small garden behind the building and sit on a bench. The air smells of grass and flowers, not like my old yard, but close enough to remind me. I close my eyes and feel the sun on my face, and for a moment I am back there, trimming hedges, listening to Maggie call me in for dinner, hearing the kids argue over whose turn it is to set the table. Those memories are both a comfort and a wound. They remind me of how full my life once was, and how quiet it has become. I still hope, even now, that one day Daniel will walk through the door, that he will sit beside me and say, "Dad, I'm still hurt, but I don't want to lose you." I imagine Emily coming too, her gentle smile returning, her voice warm again. I imagine us talking, not about money or houses, but about life, about love, about Maggie, about all the things that really matter. I don't know if that day will ever come, but hope is hard to let go of, especially when so much else already has been. Sometimes I ask myself what I would change if I could go back. Would I still leave the house to Ruth? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know anymore. But one thing I am certain of, I would have spoken. I would have gathered them around that old kitchen table, poured coffee, and said, "There's something we need to talk about." I would have told them what I was thinking, why I felt the way I did. I would have listened to their fears, their anger, their doubts, even if it had been hard, even if it had led to tears. Because Silence has a way of doing more damage than any difficult conversation ever could. If there's a lesson in my story, it's this. Don't wait. Don't assume love will carry the weight of unspoken words. Say what needs to be said while there is still time, while voices can still answer back. Now, most evenings, I sit in my room with Maggie's photograph on the table beside me. I tell her about my day, about Ruth's visit, or Lily's stories, or the way the sun looked through the window. And sometimes I tell her how much I miss our family being whole. I don't know if she can hear me, but it helps to speak, even into the quiet. Because quiet, when it lasts too long, can be louder than any argument. As the months pass, I feel time more than I ever did before. Not in big moments, but in small ones. In how long it takes me to walk down the hall. In how quickly the light fades in the evenings. In how often I catch myself repeating the same stories because they are the pieces of my life I'm most afraid of losing. The doctors tell me my heart is holding steady, for now. They speak carefully, the way people do when they know nothing is promised. I nod and thank them and try not to think too far ahead. But when you reach my age, the future is never far from your thoughts, no matter how hard you try to keep it at bay. I have started writing letters, not to send, at least not yet. Just letters to my children tucked away in the drawer beside my bed. One for Daniel, one for Emily, one for Ruth. In them, I try to put into words the things I can't seem to say out loud anymore. I tell Daniel how proud I am of his strength, how I admire the way he built his life, how I never meant to make him feel less than. I tell Emily how much her laughter has always meant to me, how she brought light into our home, even on the darkest days. And I tell Ruth how grateful I am for her kindness, for the way she stayed when things were hardest, for the love she continues to show me even when it costs her. I don't know if I will ever give them those letters, but writing them makes me feel closer to them, as if, in some small way, I am still reaching across the distance between us. Some nights I imagine what it will be like when I'm gone, not in a morbid way, just in a wondering way. I picture them standing together, maybe in that little room again, reading those same words from my will. I wonder if, by then, the anger will have softened, if time will have done what I could not. I hope they will talk about me, not just about the house or the money, but about the man who tried, in his imperfect way, to love them all. I hope they will remember Maggie too. Her warmth, her patience, her quiet strength. I hope they will remember that everything we did for them. I don't know if my choices will ever make sense to them. I don't know if they will ever forgive me for the hurt they feel. But I hold on to the belief that one day, when life has worn them down a little, when they have faced their own hard decisions, they might look back and see not just the outcome of my choice, but the heart behind it. And maybe then they will understand. Until that day, I do the best I can with what I have. I smile at the nurses. I listen to Ruth when she visits. I sit in the garden when the weather is kind. I tell Maggie about my days and pretend she answers me, just like she used to. I live in the small moments because small moments are what life is made of in the end. If Daniel or Emily were to walk through that door tomorrow, I wouldn't talk about the will. I wouldn't talk about the house. I would just say, "I'm glad you're here." I would ask about their lives. I would tell them I love them. Because I have learned that when time grows short, the things we think matter most often fade away, and what's left is simply this: the need to be close to the people who once made your world full. I don't know how my story will end. None of us ever do. But I know this: I am more than a will, more than a house, more than a decision written on a piece of paper. I am a husband who loved his wife for nearly 50 years, a father who did his best with what he knew, a man who made choices, sometimes right, sometimes wrong, but always from a place of love. And if my children ever hear my voice again, in their memories, in their hearts, I hope they will hear this: I never stopped loving you. Not for a moment, not even when you walked away. Because love, even when it is misunderstood, even when it is imperfect, is the one thing that lasts longer than anger, longer than money, longer than any house ever could. That is what I choose to believe as I sit here now, listening to the quiet, holding Maggie's photograph in my hands, and waiting, not in fear, but in hope, that somewhere, somehow, the family I built will find its way back to one another again.